Who's wrong and who's wronger? In this corner, followed by millions, James the Exploding Unicorn Breakwell. And in that corner, ignored by millions, Steve Dash Rinko Levens.
Oh, jeez. Oh, sorry. I was... Hey, everybody. Man, sorry about that. I feel vulnerable and exposed and almost naked under this robe. But hey, you have reached Wrong and Wronger, and I'm sorry. I was downstairs getting a light spa treatment. I was having a mani and a pedi. I was getting just a little cucumber wrap, and you know how it goes. But welcome. I am the freshly exfoliated Dr. Steve, and he is the flaky, dead skin, not quite old enough to be wrinkly yet, James Breakwell. And James, how are you doing tonight, man? You look different. Where are you?
I am in a different room of the house. I have lost my office. I am homeless like you. I've been cast out to the main area where hopefully children and pigs and things will not wander through the shop. But we'll see. I did not have time to erect defensive barriers, so we'll just get what we get today.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, you sound on the verge of despondency, so I'm sorry that you have lost your man cave.
It is tragic, but not as tragic as talking to you. So it's just one bad thing piled on top of another.
James is a little cranky tonight because we've gone international. I'm in Toronto. I'm in Calgary, Toronto. I don't even know what the country's called. I'm in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And Breakwell had a little trouble reaching me tonight, and he was, in a word, agitated.
Well, you're sitting there texting me because I'm 5 minutes late. In the meantime, I'm stuck in your endless phone tree. There's one person in either the United States and Canada who uses the actual phone in a hotel room, and it's Steve. He's the only one. So the phone trees aren't set up for that. You call the hotel, it says press 0 for an operator. There's no operator. It's a lie. You can't push a button to dial an extension. It's a dead end. They just assume you'll go away because nobody would ever use that unless you're like a drug dealer and you have a burner phone. It's like nobody uses the hotel room phone. So yeah, that was my adventure. Steve is backwards and does not understand technology, but we all know that already.
What? How is this my fault?
You picked the hotel. I didn't put you there. I stayed in America.
Oh my God. Well, that's because there are international laws against allowing you past the border. But you have reached, ladies and gentlemen, the podcast, the international podcast, where we argue weekly about things that don't matter to nobody. But James, the one this week matters to almost everybody. What are we arguing this week?
What's the ultimate TV series? Is it Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad? Which is better?
Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad. And there is a backstory to this. I suggested The Sopranos, and he said Breaking Bad has more viewers.
Yes.
So we will see. I think either would make for a spirited conversation. But today, Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad. And James, I know you have a problem with math, but I think the winner was laid out pretty clearly from last week's debate. Do you remember who that winner was?
I do not, and I do not need you to remind me. I think we will just move right along with the episode because we got to cram a lot of content into these 15 minutes.
Absolutely. But I will say the winner is beaming today. Just beaming. And the winner doesn't roll out of bed looking this good. The winner's on YouTube, man. The winner's got to get these kind of treatments. I need a little help. Sorry, I let slip who won. But yeah, so moving into the compliment segment of our show. And James, I don't know if you're even in the mood to deliver a compliment. Are you okay with your half of this part of the show?
I have a compliment for you. So this weekend, as I lay dying from food poisoning, I just felt absolutely terrible. I just sitting there, barely had the will to live. But I thought, you know what? I can get through this because I have felt sicker. I feel sicker every time I answer the phone and talk to Steve. So I could power through this. So my compliment to you is thank you for preparing me for the worst day of my life. You got me there. You were looking out for my best interest by making me feel sick to my stomach all those times. So props to you. You're like my gross Yoda.
Did you have trichinosis? I can't remember what you ate that was bad. Was it chicken or pork?
It was pork. I mean, I didn't scientifically break it down. The most likely candidate was some pork jalapeno bratwursts I had. It also could have been some mushrooms, not the fun kind of mushrooms, just the regular kind you chop up and saute. But it was one of those things. It did not end well.
Man, and I will I've said this 100 times. If you don't get Breakwell's email blast every Monday, where he details all of the reasons that he shouldn't still be alive, I recommend it highly. Because one of these days, the column is going to end halfway, and you'll know he's finally kicked the bucket. This is the end of it.
It's set to go out automatically with whatever I finish. So you'll get one. It'll just be my death screech at the end.
Yeah, and the compliment I had queued up for today is a little bit off-putting. Not off-putting. It's a little. It's
Everything
not quite
you say
as appropriate.
is off-putting.
No, it's a compliment. It's not off-putting like your compliments are. But it's James. Congratulations on having just enough kids and pigs to be successful in life. That every week this email comes out, and you cannot make up the stuff that Breakwell details in those emails. Now this week he's a little more focused on himself because as everybody does, there's a lot of people on death row that find Jesus all of a sudden. You get introspective. You get a little more existential about living and dying and the reason to be and all the Viktor Frankl, Rollo May, Soren Kierkegaard kind of stuff. But James, you have arranged your life such that you have things happen to you that nobody has happened to them. And the way you captured in the email just makes us all appreciate not being you.
Every week, I think this will be the week there'll be no email. Nothing will go wrong this week, and it has never once happened. I will never have a week where everything doesn't get destroyed. So I guess I should thank my kids, really. It's a compliment for them for just bringing down the worst on all of us.
Well, worst, you did have bratwurst this week.
That is
you had
true.
a pig issue last week, so it varies.
Okay,
it's
so,
gonna be one
so
thing
it's
or the other.
99% self-inflicted. The polite thing to do would have been to not point that out, but you know.
All right, well, as per usual, what did I do with the quarter? Oh, no. I just had it sitting in front of me.
I don't want to think about where you
All
lost
this
that thing.
set-
Put
oh,
on
here
some
it is.
clothes.
All of your anger, your vitriol by text. It was I was afraid when you were so angry. I thought, oh, this reminds me when my parents argue. Breakwell getting mad at the hotel and displacing it onto me. I became the lightning rod for all of that angry energy. But I found the Guam Quarter of Fate. It has gone international with me. It's in Calgary, Alberta, and it will determine which side we argue. And what do the two sides represent for you?
Heads, it's Game of Thrones, tails, Breaking Bad.
Heads, Game of Thrones, tails, Breaking Bad. Okay. And before I reveal, did you watch Breaking Bad?
I did, all the way to the bitter end.
Okay.
Did
All
you?
right.
I guess I should have asked you that before we debated, but a lack of knowledge has never stopped you on any other topic, so I guess what's it matter?
The one that stopped me in my tracks actually was Star Trek. I had no idea what you were talking about half the time. That's been a good year and a half ago or so. It is Guam, so you actually have Breaking Bad, and I have Game of Thrones. So, Breakwell, I will turn the floor over to
I guess
you.
a quick starter question. Have you watched Game of Thrones?
Zero.
Delightful. Why did you agree to this topic? You suggested this topic. Well, all right then. I'll start out with this. So, in all the rankings that are out there, pretty much universally, everybody agrees that Breaking Bad is the greatest TV series of all time. You have Bryan Cranston, this amazing actor, who was in Malcolm in the Middle. This, a silly, quirky guy. But what kind of range does he have? He goes
Sure.
from this lovable high school teacher to this dark villain who you're rooting against by the end of the last season. And the transformation is incredible, and it's believable, and it's dramatic, and then he kind of turns it around a little bit at the end. You're rooting for him again. Game of Thrones, what Game of Thrones has right now is everybody on the internet hating it. Okay, I'm
What?
one of the
Oh,
biggest.
Oh, well,
I'm
the
one-
one episode, come
I
on.
am. Oh no, it's many, many episodes. Like I'm one of the biggest Game of Thrones fans out there. One of my best friends actually leads the Game of Thrones Reddit on Reddit, the subreddit on there. It's got like 1 million people in it, and so every week he has his pulse on the community, and I hear all about the controversies, whether I want to or not. And fans are irate about basically everything. I mean, they're just not going to stick the landing. The show had a promising start. There were all these fan theories, and the problem with fan theories is eventually just one thing has to happen. And over and over and over again, the show's creators are choosing the stupidest possible things to happen. If you have not watched this season yet, go ahead and turn off the podcast. Not that you need any extra motivation to turn off our podcast. I'm sure you've already stopped listening. But there's a character named Bran on there, and Bran can see back in time. And the whole thing was people thought he was going to become the Night King. That was one of the theories. And this means nothing to Steve. His eyes are glazing over. He's probably in a coma by now. Basically,
I'm watching TV over here. It'll be okay.
So
I got a Will Smith
and this was
movie
a story I was going to tell in the newsletter, but it got cut for a very specific reason. So we got into a heated argument about this, about whether or not this kid was going to go back in time and accidentally become the chief villain of this show. And my friend who leads the subreddit said, no, he doesn't do that because the show writers are awful and that's not going to happen. I said, no, this show has a point. They didn't spend this entire time having him go back in time and do all this stuff for nothing. Well, it turns out, it looks like my friend was right, unless there's some sort of crazy reverse in the last 2 seasons. One of the main characters in this show from season 1 was completely and utterly pointless. This guy has dozens of hours dedicated just to him for nothing. He gets this big revelation that it turns out in season 8 or season 7, another character also gets from another direction. So they didn't even need Bran at all. He was completely superfluous to the story. And I don't know how you can waste that much time on a character that doesn't matter. Breaking Bad, every single character matters. There's not a wasted line in that whole show. And I guess I should go ahead, speaking of wasted lines, and give you a chance to talk. So what say you, Steve, about the show you've never seen?
I'm sorry, I dozed off over there. What were we talking about? James, it's interesting. Your whole argument for Breaking Bad was breaking down the series of Game of Thrones.
It's in trouble.
Your anger, all of this that you're feeling, all of the churn that you have underneath is exactly why Game of Thrones is now the standard on television. Sopranos is one of the standards. Friends, from a series standpoint, is one of the standards. And The Sopranos. And now it's Game of Thrones, because Game of Thrones has upped the game on production. Writing is always part of great shows. Breaking Bad, I can't argue with you. That thing, from season 1 through season 4, it was like a 40-hour movie. It had a beginning and a middle and an end, and it was tight. Season 5, I think, fell apart a little bit. But it's the standard. We've got 5,000 different characters in all of the seasons of Game of Thrones, each one with a name you can neither pronounce nor remember. You start remembering characters by little quirks or idiosyncrasies that they have, or different weird ways that they look. And how universal is it? I mean, they're talking about it on the radio. And the season, or the last episode, now, Sunday's episode I don't know a lot about because I haven't listened to the radio yet because I've been on the road. But that battle scene in the snow that was candlelit, it was, first of all, from just a production standpoint, brilliant. It's never been done before. Now, it might have irritated some people because you really couldn't tell who lived and who died and what was going on, and you needed like a 10D television set in order to be able to watch it. But it's still brilliant. Everything they do is brilliant. And they have all of the parts of life that everyone loves. They have dragons, and who doesn't love dragons? They got bloodshed, they got bad language, and they got boobs. So all of the big B's. It's not too cold for the bees to come out in the world of Game of Thrones, man. Everyone loves it. And it's just millions and millions of dollars on the production. No one has ever done that before. It has raised the bar. Whatever's coming along behind it, and every few years there's another epic that comes out. I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be interactive somehow. Things are going to be coming out of the TV set into your living room. That's the only way to up the game from Game of Thrones. There's nothing that Breaking Bad has that isn't good from a writing standpoint, but when you want to combine writing with production, Game of Thrones brings it, man. It is a Nolan Ryan fastball.
Game of Thrones, they throw away character story arcs for no reason. And you end up with this a lot of times with shows that don't have a definite ending. It's one of my problems with The Walking Dead. Like, everything's going wrong, and then the characters overcome it, but the show has to have another season, so everything goes wrong again, and the characters regress. You know, the character Carol goes from being a timid housewife to being Rambo, to back to being timid, to being Rambo. Morgan goes from crazy to not crazy. It happens all the time, and you don't have that in Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad is a straight line. You've got a straight-laced guy who's sick of following the system and has been dealt a bad hand in life, and he goes through, and you see very clearly why he takes these little steps. Well, yes, he has to deal drugs. He has to provide for his family. Well, yes, he has to kill this one guy, but he's a bad guy, and he's still providing for his family. Well, yes, he has to kill like 6 guys, but come on, he already killed one. Like, you can just see the gradual creep, and you're on board with him almost all the way to the end. Honestly, I was on board with him all the way to the end because I'm a horrible person. In Game of Thrones, you don't get that. They just... There's a lot of pent up stuff here. First of all, I enjoy watching the show. Don't let a TV show ruin my life like a lot of people. But as long as we're going to lay it all on the table, I've read the books. I read up to the point where George R.R. Martin just stopped writing books because he has more money than God. He doesn't have to write books anymore. If you think he's ever going to finish that other book, you're crazy. And when the show ran out of pages to follow, it just kind of lost its way. And it's like, okay, well, Daenerys has been this queen, and she's chaotic good. She does what's right, even if it's not in her best political interest. And now she's kind of flipped and like, oh, well, maybe now she's an insane queen just because. Because why not? Or Jaime Lannister goes from dishonorable to all of a sudden, like 2 episodes ago, he knights Brienne, and he's the most honorable man in the world. And now, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, for no reason, he completely flips that and is going to go running back to his sister. It doesn't make any sense. Like, all the progress you make along the way gets consistently thrown away, and it's like the characters are completely different characters from episode to episode. It's not like there's progression. As for the production values, it doesn't matter how much you spend on that great shot if you film it in a pitch black closet. Like, I don't know what they're showing there. You can't see it. Like, they went on and on about how this battle scene took 82 days to film. And, like, I had no idea what was going on. It's like, okay, there's some shadowy figures moving around in the dark. Like, I could have shot this for a tenth of the budget. Then I saw the making of video afterwards. Like, holy cow, that's amazing. That's not CGI. There are real people there. But they took real people physically present with great costumes and made it so dim that it looked like bad CGI. Like, I don't know how that makes sense. That's not a good use of your budget. Breaking Bad was made for a fraction of that cost. It needed very few special effects, just an explosion here or there, nothing crazy, and it worked. It just completely worked. But I want you to do a service for the fans, Steve, because you're an interesting case study, because you can't be on the internet and not hear about Game of Thrones right now. But you, as somebody who's watched 0 seconds of Game of Thrones, please briefly, or actually in as many words as you want, give me what you think the plot summary of Game of Thrones is. I cannot wait to hear this.
I have no idea.
In fact, take your best guess.
All right. In fact, last week, I think you and I were just kind of chatting casually, and I think it was you I was talking to when I said, doesn't it take place on Earth, like in the northern fjords of Norway? And you said, no, it's like a whole nother world. I thought, oh, see, I don't even know the setting of the damn show, but I believe it is about, I'm just going off what the title is and knowing that there's just sort of how life works, that it's an upward bottleneck to see who will take over power, the throne, right?
It's not a bad supposition based on the title alone. I was hoping for a few more details, but I'll give you a pass on this one. You wiggled your way out of it.
Why do you ask?
I wanted to hear. I didn't know what sort of crazy things you'd cooked up in your head, because I see people all the time. The thing that people on Twitter love to brag about the most is that they have not seen any Game of Thrones. It's a mark of pride. Nobody cares, but they're so proud of letting people know that. And you, as somebody who's done that, like, I've had shows before that I haven't watched any of either, but people talk about them so much that you kind of get a sense of what they're about. So I didn't know what had seeped into your head and what had just gone through, in one ear and out the other. I know at your advanced age, you're not really capable of retaining new information. So that was really more for me than for the fans, just to see what you thought.
Oh, I see. No, I don't. It's not a point of pride for me. I just haven't seen it, and I really haven't. The only reason I know what was going on with that snowy battle scene was because Howard Stern went on a long rant about how awful that episode was. That is the only detail of the show, other than. No, I don't even think that's a different No, that's about the only detail of the show I have. I don't even know how many seasons it's been on. I have no idea the characters' names. I don't have any idea what the plot line is, and I don't brag about that like I'm better than that. I'm just not into it. It's like NFL football. I just don't pay attention.
Tells you everything you need to know. Game of Thrones at this point is forgettable. You can't be in 2019 and not know what Breaking Bad is about, but you can be in 2019 and not know what Game of Thrones is about. Truthfully, the people watching the show don't even know what it's about anymore. The writers of the show don't know what it's about anymore. The show can't make up its mind. It's changing everything back and forth, and I wanted it to stick the landing. I love the show. I'm going to watch it all the way through, but man, there are going to be a lot of angry people, and hopefully those angry people vote this week and vote for Breaking Bad and not for Game of Thrones.
Well, let's toss the dice and find out who they have to vote for.
Yes. All right. Well, if you want to vote for Breaking Bad, which both people on this podcast have seen start to finish, vote for 53. If you want to vote for, what's the other show? Game of Thrones? I don't even remember. So only one of us has seen it. Vote for 67. And if you want to throw your vote away, vote for 23.
23. Once again, we have two options to throw your vote away, and they kind of mirror each other. 5 and 2. 5 is kind of a backwards 2, and they both end in 3. So don't vote for anything that ends in 3. Go with Lucky 7, 67, and the Game of Thrones, and the show that everybody is talking about, even Olivas and Breakwell. What a satisfying way to spend the entire show not really talking, because Breakwell picked up the ball and ran with it like Forrest Gump in that one. But so yeah, vote. Get out there and vote, because every week Olivas wins and Breakwell has to come up with new ways to explain why math is broken and wrong and just grating on his nerves. But until next week, this is Steve, the freshly exfoliated and smelling like lilac Olivas, and James, I can't imagine what he smells like in that new man cave Breakwell, saying thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and remember, 2 wrongs can make a right.